Welcome, everybody, to episode 92 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, an Ivy League girl from the Bikini Network, and I'm coming to you from my very own personal chalet in the Alps here in Brooklyn, New York. It's pretty fancy, but I'm not the only person who is bumbling around this Bluth model home. No, who's here with me?
Well, first of all, don't ever yell at me like that when I'm peeing. And secondly, it's me, the Stevester, Steve Guntley, and this is the podcast about yodeling Hitlers, booger coffee, and RC madness. That's because this is the podcast about Remote, a strangely overlooked family film from the heyday of Moonbeam Entertainment. That's right, we are back in the child-friendly Moonbeam territory of the early days of Full Moon, the strangely most profitable part of the entire Full Moon empire then and maybe still now. An amazing little weird period of time in the Full Moon catalog. I'm always excited to get to break away from horror a little bit and talk about another genre. So I'm excited that we finally get to dip into a proper Home Alone ripoff, which was its own genre in the 90s. Home Alone ripoffs was its own genre and this is representing that very well. And we have a very fun guest joining us today for this episode. Who is here with us today, Jared? Manning the controls.
If you're somebody like us who, does a show that is pretty heavily based in nostalgia and you've checked out a lot of other YouTube channels, you've probably come across Video Villa Entertainment, which is Becca and Logan, a husband and wife who are self-proclaimed obsessives when it comes to movies, also a nostalgic bunch. We have one of the two hosts here, Logan, who is with us today to talk about this Moonbeam movie. Logan, how's it going, man?
It's going great. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. We're happy to have you here. Now, this is a movie that you chose. You requested to be on this episode. So I assume this is one that you have a little nostalgia for?
Yeah, I will say, to be honest, right off the gate, I came into horror later in life. So when I also knew y'all did, because y'all did at the time when I brought this up, y'all also did Pet Shop. So I was like, okay, y'all do the kids ones, Hysteria and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, let's do Remote, because I remember watching that as a child. You know what I mean? So that's the one I'm probably going to be able to latch on to the most as far as the movie list goes. So I was like, okay, well, that will be fun, because I haven't revisited this in years, but I remember seeing the trailers on VHS or something like that from my local store, which was called Video Villa.
Nice.
So I was like, all right, okay, cool. Let's do this one, because I actually remember watching this one as a child.
All right, so we can safely assume that you are a VSK like us. You are a video store kid who grew up hanging around video stores and reading all the boxes. Is that a safe assumption?
100%. I said, I didn't. I came into horror later in life, but I was always fascinated by it. So I would always walk down every movie aisle before I made my choice. Like sometimes we would get to pick a movie or a game, or sometimes both.
Yeah.
So if that was the scenario, I always want to pick out the perfect movie for that Friday night. And even though I was a scaredy cat and I wouldn't pick up the tapes to rent them, I love looking at the horror tapes. So later in life, once I became older, like around age of 13, that's when I really started diving headface into it. And at that time, I didn't have any restrictions. My parents weren't going to care what I was renting at that time and stuff like that. So I hit the ground running. But when I saw, like I said, the Moonbeam movies, okay, Remote, I can talk more about that, because that is I'm a little bit more fond of that one.
See, you're in a unique situation then when it comes to our guests, because so when we did our episode on Prehysteria, we did not have a guest. It was just me and Steve, who have zero nostalgia for that movie from, being aware of it later in life, not even at the time of when it was hitting shelves to try to, kind of piggyback on the success of Jurassic Park. But when it came to covering Pet Shop also, the situation that happened for that one was we had a guest lined up and they were like, gonna do a movie that was a pretty gross movie with some pretty mature, unpleasant themes. And I guess on their own show, they had been covering a lot of really kind of messed up stuff. And so they kind of came to us and said, can we do a complete 180 and just cover a kid's movie?
Yeah.
And so they didn't even really come into it with any nostalgia for it. They were just like, oh, I kind of know this one exists. Like, let's give it a try. And so you're coming in now, having watched Remote as a kid, which I think is amazing, because you're kind of the first Moonbeam guest now on the show who really has a connection to these movies. Because for Steve and I, it was different. But I thought of something. I was thinking back to our episodes on Prehysteria and Remote, which was, Steve and I have talked a lot on the show about our relationship to horror and when we got into horror, and I got into it a little bit earlier than him, but we both got into it pretty early. And so we started our discussion started with like, okay, yes, I was young. Maybe when I was 8, I was obsessed with Freddy. And then most of what I was watching, maybe not most, but like all of the kind of mature things I was watching between the ages of like 8 and 11 were all of the slasher franchises that were around at the time. But it's like, we didn't really use the opportunity in those episodes to talk about like what kind of programming for children we actually watched. Like,
right.
I was a kid. Like, I was watching Freddy and Jason, but I was also watching Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah.
I was also watching Hey Vern, It's Ernest. And I was also watching Saved by the Bell. And I was also, Garfield and Friends and, Heathcliff and stuff like that. And so it's just funny because I feel like I've always presented myself as like this kid who is like a, way too mature for my age, which is not accurate. Like I was maybe 8 years old, super excited to watch Freddy, but I also was renting kid related tapes. And so as I watched this movie, there was something about it, the time period. I was like, if I was a couple years younger and this movie had come out a couple years earlier, like trying to cash in on the success of Home Alone, like right away.
Yeah.
This would have probably been a staple in my house. If I had been born in 83 or 84 and this had come out in like 91, I would have forced my mom to pick this up off the grocery store, like checkout counter, spinny VHS counter, and I would have watched this thing probably a million times.
I think I have a memory of watching, maybe seeing the trailer for this one, because I believe when I was being babysat once, the babysitter brought a copy of Dragon World, which is another Moonbeam movie that we're going to cover down the line. So,
which I'm excited to cover because that's another Ted Nicolau, and my understanding of that one, even though I never saw it, and it's aimed at children, is that it's pretty good, is what I've heard. And
it's I think still the most expensive full moon production. I might be wrong about that. We'll get to it when we get to it. But Remote is an interesting one because it's coming on the heels of Prehysteria, which was this massive VHS success. It was one of the best-selling home videos of all time, or at least it's certainly of movies that were made exclusively for home video. And it was just kind of going gangbusters. And this one came out immediately after and was kind of lost in the shuffle. This is Dave J. in his book, It Came from the Video Aisle, which is a regular resource for us, mentions this as like a movie that very few people have seen. It kind of slipped through the cracks. So let's talk a little bit about Remote, which was released September 22nd, 1993. It's directed by Ted Nicolau. It's written by Mike Farrow. And it stars Chris Carrera, Jessica Bowman, Daria Ruggles, Jordan Belfi, Kenneth A. Brown, Lorna Scott, Ann Randolph, Tony Longo, Stuart Fratkin, and John Deal. Now, like we said, this is the second released full moon film. I believe this was filmed before Prehysteria, but Prehysteria beat it to video store shelves by a couple of months because they were really trying to get in on that Jurassic Park mania. So this movie was written by Mike Farrow, who is a comedian better known for his character Tommy Sledge. And this really triggered like a weird memory hold thing for me. Tommy Sledge was a film noir style stand-up detective who I think did like maybe I saw him on one like special in very early Comedy Central, but he's just got this whole like classic Marlowe bit and it's just like telling stand-up bits about set in modern day. It's really strange. It's an unusual bit, but it really triggered the memory hole thing for me. Have either of you heard of Tommy Sledge?
Not me. I mean, I saw it when I was doing the background before the taping and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not familiar for the character that he used to portray.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It was just one of those little things that I never thought I would think of again, and it's just like, oh, wow, that was still in my brain somewhere.
Yeah, I only really learned of it reading up more about this writer for this episode, and I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting concept that I don't think I ever really saw, and my brain went to David Rash as Sledgehammer, which is not the same thing.
Not the same, no. So now, obviously, the big inspiration for this movie is Home Alone. Now, the Home Alone phenomenon is a really fascinating little period of cinema for me because the Macaulay Culkin phenomenon in particular, because they knew that they had to strike while the iron is hot. So we had like 4 years there where Macaulay Culkin was one of the biggest movie stars on the planet because he was a kid and he was cute as a kid, and we needed to get that out like before he hit puberty. And then actually that happened. He hit puberty and the offers stopped coming in, but there were a lot of other movies that were trying to cash in on this little moment. So every bit of kids entertainment had at least like 15% of Home Alone in it, if not more. Like, think of things like Beethoven or Three Ninjas or Dennis the Menace.
We were just obsessed with home invasion in kids' movies.
And kids
Three Ninjas is amazing.
Oh yeah, Three Ninjas was a lot of fun. Me and my friends were obsessed with Three Ninjas when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, I mean that was one thing I saw because this one felt like the two put together the most. I felt
it did.
And that's what I saw was like because the Three Ninjas came out in 92 and this one came out in 93. I was like,
yeah,
all right, I could definitely see like, okay, not only are we pulling from Home Alone, but we also have this, I don't know, like the three bumbling idiots that just robbed something. So I was like, that concept carries over.
Yeah, and this movie makes the classic mistake that a lot of the lesser like Home Alone knockoffs make, which is that they make the bad guys too stupid and too bumbling, which I feel like just kind of deflates the tension. I think the thing that really works about the first Home Alone movie that doesn't work about any of the sequels is that those guys feel kind of dangerous. Like when the cartoony shit starts happening to them, they are like fumfering and being really big and being really silly, but they're not full cartoon characters, and you feel like they're just like making them angrier and angrier.
No,
and you lose that by the second one. Yeah,
Harry and Marv, they are menacing in that movie, and when it starts getting cartoonish, it's like they are two essentially normal people who are then being like violence is being done to them by Macaulay Culkin. It isn't them just falling all over each other, just trying to walk, up and down a staircase.
Right.
So it's like, that's a big difference. Like before in the denouement of Home Alone, before any of that stuff starts happening, you're right. Like they are kind of scary. And then that's one thing right out of the gate about this movie is that in Home Alone, it's like, oh, if they catch Kevin, they will kill him.
Yeah.
And that's why you need old man Markley to come in with the shovel. Like here, there never really is the threat of that. It's kind of like, well, if these three morons catch him, what's really the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah, it kind of feels like they're going to defeat themselves before he ever really needs to intervene. But it does have this great early 90s setup of just kind of like semi-lonely, kind of bullied kid with like distracted workaholic parents who is really good with machines and really resourceful and is able to fight off a bunch of bad guys and prove his strength all along. This movie does something that the Home Alone actually neglects to do, which I think is establish early on that this kid is good with machines and is kind of resourceful in this way. I think when Kevin McAllister starts building traps and stuff like that, it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, wow, yeah, apparently I knew how to do that. But this movie sets up early on. It's like, oh, okay, he's good with machines, and he gets kind of picked on for being good at science.
I never really thought about that. That's kind of like in Nightmare on Elm Street, at least, they have the scene where Nancy's reading the book about how to set booby traps.
Right, yeah, exactly. You need that book. Now I have to ask y'all, were any of you able to pull off that 90s center part floppy haircut thing? I was never able to do it.
No, I had the bowl cut. I had the bowl cut for the longest time. And it was just it. Like I never had the because also to pull off that center part, I don't care what kid you are, you're using mousse because that's the only way you can train your hair to separate like that and just that Sean from Boy Meets World look and stuff. Like you can't do that without a product.
Oh, but this was if you wanted to be a cute boy in the early 90s, this was your look. You had to be able to do that split. And I never figured out how to do it. My hair was very curly when I was younger, so it was just the big old fro. And I was never able to do it.
My hair was short and spiky kind of when I was a kid. And then once I was an adolescent, that was another thing is I was looking at these kids in this movie and I would have been basically the exact same age as them. Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously, if you're in a kid's movie, a movie like this is aimed at kids slightly younger than the protagonist. That's generally how you want it to be in a kid's movie. And so I'm looking at them and I'm like, man, in like 92 into 93 was for me when I had my biggest kind of first transformation, which was I stopped kind of wearing just clothing that my parents bought me. And it was
Right.
like, now I'm wearing jeans and I'm wearing a band t-shirt and a flannel shirt and, you know, Converse All-Stars. And I started growing my hair out longer around this time too. It was not that cut that this kid has,
Yeah.
but I was like, man, you know, this is right on the cusp of before I changed. The style was very accurate for like, if this was released in 93, I mean, these things are shot quickly. So this was probably shot in early 93, but the 1992 fashion is very on display in this movie. And it was, I just looked and I found the kid kind of off-putting because he just looked, I don't know if you remember what this guy looked like, but he looked too much like the rapper Snow.
Oh yeah, Informer.
From the Informer video.
Licky boom boom down. Yeah.
Yeah, he had like the little glasses and the hair kind of moosed back with the center part. I did not have that particular haircut, but I had one that was equally bad, which was a year or two later. I kind of had my attempt at growing my hair long in sort of a my so-called life kind of way.
Right.
And that was kind of center parted, but I ended up kind of just looking like the oldest Hanson brother.
Oh, see, there you go. Yep.
Yeah. It wasn't good for anyone.
That was a little period there. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew I grew my hair out long, like a little bit later in life. So I was probably in the 2000s. So 2004, 2005 and stuff like that. So at that point in time, it was a completely different time era. So we you know, you had like a lot of people were, which have made a comeback, but the fashion mullets, a lot of people were sporting those, but I had like that long Jesus haircut, basically, where it's just like, and like, it wasn't parted. It was like parted to the side and then you hooked it over your ear.
Oh yeah.
And it just laid like between your ears, like right here and stuff like that. So I definitely grew my hair out because one time I remember talking about bad haircuts. I wanted to grow my hair out. My mom wouldn't let me. And she's like, you're not going to take care of it. But even though like I was like a very well-kept kid, like you had some of the kids like at the playground that used to run around with chocolate on their face, like, or like snot boogers, like hanging, like dried to their lips and stuff like that. I was not that kid. Like, I mean, like I always was very like clean my face and stuff like that. So I always, like, I cared about my hair. And she was like, you're not going to take care of your hair. So she forced me to go to Fantastic Sam's, and literally it looked like someone just took a go-kart helmet and put it on my head. Like my bangs were cut perfectly, and then it just hooked around my ears and cut. And then it was just like almost like a Beatles haircut, but obviously that was not the thing in the 2000s to have. So yeah, after that, I kind of won my battle. She let me start growing.
Everyone was channeling the British invasion.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, a little late, but it got there. Yeah.
Me on my solo attempt.
So the basic outline of this movie is just that there's a lonely, nerdy kid who is obsessed with making RC cars and RC machines and kind of tinkering with all these little gadgets. And he and his best friend, who's this little girl, they have a secret hideout, which is this old, like you mentioned, Jared, like a Bluth style, like model home that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And he gets trapped there one day when a couple of criminals who are escaping from a botched bank robbery are holding up in there, and he needs to find a way to escape. And he's using all his little gadgets and toys to help, disrupt their evil plans, which are basically just getting away.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we talk about how the wet bandits were kind of menacing and scary in the beginning of Home Alone. In this one, and you don't even really know that they're the bandits, and then the reveal of that Joe Pesci is bad is actually like an oh shit moment in Home Alone. In this movie, from the first time they're introduced, it's like a news report that's like the three bumbling morons can be found. Like it's from minute one. It's like everyone involved knows that these are hapless people that have no chance of pulling off anything with any stakes. So it kind of just deflates the whole thing right from the very beginning.
Immediately,
if you see these three fucking morons in the street, kick them in the nards. Like they won't do anything.
Now, two of these guys are Tony Longo and Stuart Fratkin, and they are playing the exact same characters that they just played in Pre-Hysteria. Now, Logan, when you were a kid watching this movie, had you seen Pre-Hysteria, or did you clock that these were the same guys, or was Remote the only one that y'all did?
I had seen Pre-Hysteria. Like I said, like these movies just, once again, I saw it walking through the aisle, and little tiny dinosaurs. I'm in.
Obviously,
same thing. Batteries not included. You see little flying saucers. I'm in. Back in me, Alien. I'm in. You know what I mean?
I looked at Batteries Not Included. I'm like, Jessica Tandy's in this? I'm in. Yes, sign me up. Hume Cronin too.
I was gonna say, yeah, it was all about Hume Cronin.
You're a real Hume head, yeah.
I didn't realize getting into this that this movie Remote was in the THEU, but here we are.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, at this point in time when I'd seen them, like, yeah, I didn't. My child's eyes would not have been like, oh, they're the same guys from the other movie.
Yeah. Because there's no, like, I don't remember Prehysteria that well, even though we've probably watched it more recently than you have. But like, I don't remember if there was any kind of establishing connection to say that they got away at the end of Prehysteria or something and then got caught or joined. I don't know. I don't remember any narrative thread other than these are the same actors playing the same named characters, but maybe it's like a parallel universe kind of thing. I have no idea. But either way, that's kind of the casting gimmick there. The main thug, the only one who's like halfway competent, is played by John Deal, who's an actor I like a lot. I mostly knew him because I was a big fan of the show The Shield, and he played the corrupt like chief of police for like a dozen episodes of that show, and he was really good and really scary, and then really pathetic at the end. But at this point in his career, if you look at his filmography, it's like derelict, thug, kidnapper, shady guy, you know, like he plays a lot of those kind of roles because he's just got that kind of like greasy look to him. And he's very good at that kind of role. I love a good like villainous character actor.
Yeah, I was happy to see him here.
Here he's just kind of asked to be doing a lot of screaming, which honestly, I get it. Like his companions are so stupid that they are frustrating. Like it's like this isn't cute, you guys. You guys are too stupid to exist. Like you need to pull up a little bit here. So Logan, what was kind of the feeling around this movie in your household when you were a kid? Was this a beloved favorite? Was this one that you guys kind of put on to tune out, or how was this one treated?
I have a bigger sister. She's like 4 years apart, but like 9 times out of 10 is we would watch movies that we kind of both had to like. And like, that's the reason why there's certain movies I was kind of too young for, but like she wanted to watch them. So I'd watch them. Like, for example, like My Boyfriend's Back, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like, I was like 4 or like, there's a lot of like sexual undertones in that one, but she was more the age to watch it. So like, like Teen Witch was another one. So like that, like this was one that I had to convince her to watch. So, so probably like, to be honest, like we rented this pretty often, I would say. Like, I don't know, maybe, you know, like probably once every 7-8 months, you know what I mean? Because you kind of like, you run out of things to watch at that time frame. And then if something you like, you want to see it again.
Yeah.
So we would rent this quite a few times. Prehysteria, my sister liked that one a lot. So that was easier to get her to like convince to watch. You know, like Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. Like, because for a while, like, we just rented movies. We didn't buy them. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, I never owned this one because, like, at that point in time, like, for, like, a 4-year-old that's going to lose interest after, you know, the next couple of years. Like, you don't know if you might be you might rent a movie and, like, you'll like it, but then you won't re-rent it versus if you buy a movie. Okay, well, you just spent, like, $25 on a movie that you might only watch twice. And then your parents are like, I don't really think that's a good idea to buy that movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, especially, I mean, you watched Teen Witch, and how are you going to top that?
Yeah, you got that right.
Sorry, guys, I'll see.
You beat me to that. I almost interrupted to tell that same joke.
That's the George Costanza moment where he leaves the meeting after telling that one joke. All right, I'm good for today. I'm good. Yeah. He just walks out, drops off.
You're totally right, though. I can remember going to the video store so often and renting Ernest Goes to Camp. When Ernest Goes to Camp was new on VHS, and I rented it probably 6 weeks or something in a row. Like we returned it, I wanted it again, we went and got it again, and it never really occurred to us. I think maybe eventually we ended up like doing the illegal copying of the movie, but I just remember I went back to the video store one time after having rented it multiple weeks in a row, and there was not a copy available, and I'm pretty sure I just cried. Like.
Ernest was gods to us when we were growing up because I'm from Tennessee. And so like, and that's all that, like, you know, like that's where all that took place. I mean, those commercials aired on our local channels that, you know, you know what I mean? Vern, Mellow Yellow, 7-Up commercials, like the comparison stuff like that. Or like, you know, Purity milk. That's the milk that we would buy at the grocery stores. So
doesn't Jim Cherry have like the key to the city down there or something?
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and that's the thing is like I don't mean to go on a tangent about Ernest, but like
By all means, please do. It's been lacking. It's been
this is the one. This is the one to do it.
And
that is something.
I'm a bit of an Ernest neophyte. I'll be honest.
Me too.
I haven't seen much of it, so yeah.
Oh no, okay, because that's the funny thing
Sorry,
is like
I did not listen to what you said, Steve, and I thought you were going to say I'm kind of an Ernest super fan. So
no, the opposite. Yeah, no, I don't know much about it at all. Yeah.
No, he's great. Like it's the universe that they built for that one character. It's so crazy because he is like a legit, well-trained Juilliard actor.
Yeah,
that's like it's ridiculous that him and what's his name? What's his Cherry? What you just said his name? I can't.
Jim Cherry.
Jim Cherry. Yeah, it's just like him. Like they just created this character that like I will just live on forever. And the thing is, I thought it was more localized until like I moved out of Tennessee, and I'd be like, "Hey, do you know who Ernest is?" They're like, "Yeah, I know who Ernest is." I'm like, "Oh, you know who Ernest is?" I'm like, "I didn't know it was that big." I didn't know like literally like because I never thought that the movies actually came out in theaters, but those movies actually hit theaters.
They were successful.
It wasn't,
yeah.
I think it wasn't until like maybe it was Slam Dunk. Ernest was the first direct-to-video one.
I think you're right.
I believe Slam Dunk and Ernest, the Unfortunate Ernest Goes to Africa, I believe, were both.
Yeah. Because there's also Ernest Goes to Ernest joins the army and stuff like that. Like he is a character, but like 100%. Like if I went to the video store and Ernest Scared Stupid wasn't there, and I was feeling to watch Ernest Scared Stupid, I would definitely probably cry to my dad.
Then I got the movie and I put it on, and he started singing that "I Sure Am Glad It's Raining" song, and then I just started crying again.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, I've seen one or two of the movies, but it's been a long time, so maybe I need to do a deep dive on Ernest. Yeah, I mean, I think by the tone of the Ernest tangent, I think you can tell there's not really a whole lot plot wise to grab onto in Remote. Like I generally I enjoyed this movie. Ted Nicolau, friend of the show, he is good at making these kind of like propulsively entertaining movies and making them just like the tiniest bit smarter or more competent or more interesting than they need to be. There were little touches, like weirdly, a very minor character as the best friend of Jamal. And weirdly, I'm like, I kind of like this character. Like he's a weirdo. I like that his response when he's getting bullied is to scream and charge at the bully in his bike at full speed. I'm like, I don't think I would have seen that in a movie at this time. I'm like, that's a weird pull, and I love that he did that. I don't know.
He's done a disservice by this movie because he rides that bike right out of movie city limits and never looks back because
we never see him again. Yeah.
And it's like, here's the problem is like, because I can remember Jamal. For the life of me, cannot remember the main character's name right now without looking.
Randy.
Yeah. Okay, I would have never gotten there if you gave me 1,000 guesses. But
I was thinking Richie, but I was like, no. Because he looks like Richie Rich. I think that's why I was thinking Richie.
There's a bit of that. There's definitely
that. Yeah. Like Randy, destroys Jamal's project, and that's sort of like the inciting incident for then why he's like getting in trouble, and then that kind of pushes everything forward. But it's like Jamal's not heard from again, and I was disappointed because I really like that kid's energy, and I was like,
yeah,
I want more of Jamal. Instead, what they do is they have the girl who's their friend, who really doesn't do a whole lot in the very beginning, Judy. She then is introduced. There's like this little kind of like adolescent love interest story that's kind of introduced at first. She's kind of the tomboyish friend who's just kind of along as a third wheel. And then it's the two of them alone. And, they kind of establish that she's like into him, even though he's supposed to be this kind of like nerdy, socially awkward kind of guy. And they have the moment where he's going through and he's showing her all the things. And he's like, oh, these are all my electronics. And he's like, hey, check out this remote control. And she's like, gives him eyes. Like, she's like, oh, I'd like to control that dick. Like, that's what it's kind of funny how much they make her out of nowhere, like, come on to him. And then
he
ends up being kind of the damsel in distress at the end. And Jamal is just completely forgotten about. I thought we were going to get some kind of reunion scene between all of them. And I don't think after his project is destroyed, he's not in the movie again.
He shows up at the very end. He shows back up at the very end when they go back to school.
Oh, okay. Just at the very end, I'm gonna go. But like, there's a missed opportunity there of having like multiple gadget-oriented kids taking on the different criminals. Like when they split up or something like that, it gets a little bit more of a dynamic set piece. But like, for the most part, I enjoy the cutesy little effects they have on here. I do need to shout out Gunther, the horrible yodeling Hitler doll. That there's a scene where first of all, Gunther is being used as like the stealth puppet.
Bad idea.
Ridiculous. The only reason that works is because A, the criminals are way too stupid, and B, they're loudly singing the entire time that Gunther is doing his thing. But that also means that we're having people loudly singing and arguing in the background, plus yodeling on top of it. And it's just this chaotic noise. And I'm just like, oh my God. All right. Hey, come on, let's speed this up here.
This movie has one of my favorite things in it, which is when directors give actors the freedom to ad-lib singing. Because it reminds me. It's like, it's so stupid, but it reminds me of like what I feel like was what happened in like Friday the 13th, the final, A New Beginning.
Yeah.
Like in part 5, because there's like multiple times where characters break into song. Like there's like the outhouse call and response song, and then there's the two greasers in the car, and like the one guy's trying to fix the car, and the other guy's sitting in the driver's seat just kind of tapping. And like Danny Steinman was standing on the side being like, all right, just kind of act natural. Like your two friends whose car broke down. And the one guy's just going, rat-tat-tat-tat-too-ee, rat-tat-tat. And it's like, that's not in the script. And there's not probably even any direction. It's just like, take this opportunity to scat, to make up some silly song. And I mean, the damn enchiladas outhouse one, that takes the cake as the best of all of them, because there's no way that was in the script for that movie. But the same thing happens here, and I love it, because you could tell like this guy's like, well, what if I do this? And it's sort of like they need it because he needs to be louder than the yodeling, or at least be mistaken for the yodeling.
Right.
You can kind of, it's one of the details where I'm sure Ted Nicolau was like, great, go with it, and they gave this guy some freedom, and we get to see their improv skills on display here.
And that could have been maybe like we could set up a tension of that, saying like, oh man, I need to get this thing, but the only thing I have at my disposal is this very loud toy. How am I going to get this to work? Like, and avoid them. And, you could find a way to write that in. Instead, it's just like, oh man, this is just a lot of noise. It's a lot of noise right on top of each other.
Yeah, that one character throughout the movie, I kept on looking. I'm like, I know this guy. What do I know this guy from? And and I had to do the pull up the old IMDb. He replaces Styles in Teen Wolf 2. He replaced both of the main characters.
Right.
Jason Bateman in the second one or whatever. But he's the one who replaces Styles, the guy who would get on top of the van and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the party animal character or whatever. I was like, that's where he's from. He's a little older, but like that's where he's from.
Yeah. You're speaking of Gunther the puppet. Yeah, he did very well. He did very well.
When we talked about Prehysteria, we mentioned Tony Longo in one of my favorite scenes in a movie of all time, which is he is the giant thug who punches out Billy Ray Cyrus in Mulholland Drive.
Oh, he is, isn't he? Yeah, that's right. Oh, wow.
Well, he's a giant hulking dude, and it's like that's the whole thing. Is like Billy Ray Cyrus punches Justin Theroux and throws him out of the house, and then this guy comes in and just annihilates him.
I forgot that was him. That's amazing. I just bought a nice 4K edition of that. I'm excited to dig into it.
He's also in Angels in the Outfield too. That's what I remember him from.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Again, another floppy haired side part movie. Yeah. It was just the look at the time. Yeah. So I had fun with some of the RC effects and little things like that. I was never really an RC kid. But I know some kids around my age were really super into that. I'm looking at them like, yeah, I don't believe that this one single remote can do all of these things in 1993, but hey, that's part of the magic of the movies. It is worth noting too, this is one of the only full moon or moonbeam films of this era that does not have any supernatural elements at all. There's no tiny terrors, there's no ghosts or spook 'em ups or anything. It's all just kind of silly kid with a bunch of technical know-how, so that's kind of noteworthy in and of itself. I'm wondering if that hurt it on video store shelves a little bit, because you put it next to something like Prehysteria and Pet Shop, which have these big, colorful, like cool looking monster creatures, and maybe kids are going to gravitate towards that over the one of like the kid holding, because I think the image of the cover of this one is just the kid standing on his roof with his remote control plane and stuff like that.
Which is crazy. When you said it wasn't like it didn't do well, like in my head, like I can't wrap my head around that, because I like, you break up the cover art. I think the cover art's amazing. I think it's great. Like I like the way it's been drawn. It's not like an actual picture. It's like kind of like that National Lampoon style, like Frank Franzetta stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like that hand painted realism and stuff like that. Like, I think it looks really cool, and that shocks me that it didn't do well, because that's how I picked it up. You know, I guess I saw trailers, but like when I would see the cover art, I mean, that was 90% of the rental is the cover art. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like, I just like, I don't know, maybe, and I think that's another thing is like, there's a little bit of an age gap between us, a little bit. So like I said, I was the prime age for this. Y'all were probably just a little bit older. You're like, okay, I'm too grown up for this, maybe at this point. And like, I don't know, like, because I even remember watching this. I'm like, I thought it came out in theaters. Now, obviously, it didn't. But my little brain, I wouldn't perceive that this was a straight to video release.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you're a kid, you don't know the difference, and you don't really care. Like you're just, a movie is a movie is a movie, and if it's fun and if it entertains you, you're not really going to get upset. Well,
I think maybe it had to do a little bit with the amount of time, because we did get Home Alone 2 around the same time. And so maybe, like Home Alone was in the zeitgeist again, and maybe people were more apt to not try to find kind of a Home Alone clone. Right. They were more excited for a new Home Alone movie coming out, because I feel like Prehysteria, when that came out, when that hit the shelves, it was like anything with a dinosaur on it was flying off the shelves at that time. And it's a little harder to market this one, because you also don't know the home invasion aspect of the movie based on the cover.
Right.
And it's like with something like Prehysteria, it's like, oh boy, and little tiny dinosaurs, got it, sold, I'm in. But for this one, it's like, oh, it's a kid who makes a lot of models and flies airplanes around. It kind of, you don't really know off the cover art so much unless you really scrutinize it, to that there might be this home invasion aspect, and it's coming a couple of years removed from Home Alone. Whereas Prehysteria, I think, beat Jurassic Park into theaters. Like it hit the shelves before Jurassic Park hit theaters, I think.
Like barely before. Yeah.
Or at the same time. And it's like, I think given the choice where it was like, this is sort of like the we have Home Alone at home meme of movies, and but Home Alone 2 was got, and Home Alone 2, if I remember correctly, was a big hit. The thing is, you're talking about people's ages, Logan, and you're right, because when Home Alone 1 came out, I was fucking head over heels obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. By the time Home Alone 2 came out, I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I saw it, and there's stuff about Home Alone 2 I enjoy, but it was not the mania. Like I can remember just getting my mom to take me to see Home Alone, which I'm pretty sure was a summer release, but a Christmas movie.
It was a November release. Yeah.
Was it a November? Oh, I'm confusing it with something else. There's something else I saw that I feel like was a Christmassy movie, but it was a summer release. Okay, but Home Alone was in November. Well, Gremlins, I missed the theater. I was a little too young.
Yeah. Die Hard was the same way. Yeah. But
getting my mom to take me was like nonstop.
Home Alone was one of those weird ones that came out within the last 6 weeks of 1990, but because it was so successful, it kept playing well into 1991 and became eventually the highest grossing movie of 1990, but most of that gross was coming the following year.
Which doesn't happen anymore.
Not really.
That doesn't happen. If you're lucky, if a movie stays in theaters for 4 weeks, you're lucky.
Oh, yeah. It's ridiculous.
I'm really hoping that, like, personally for me, like going to like movies, I'm really hoping that they bring back Terrifier 3 once it hits December, so you can actually be in like the nostalgia feel of watching it during December and stuff like that. But like normally, let's just say this was 1994 and this movie came out, and let's say it was allowed to come out in theaters in 1994, yeah, that movie would probably run into December because people would keep on going back and watching, and it's related to December, so they're going to keep on paying rent on that 35 millimeter to keep it in stock at the at your local theater because it's making the money and stuff like that. So because things like this just doesn't, that what you just said, that does not happen whatsoever anymore.
Well, Jurassic Park, I think, was in the theater for about 15 months.
Titanic was in the theater for all, like, you like right at the same thing. Titanic was in the theater to the week it was released on VHS. At least I can say at my local theater, which was an independent theater. So like the same, like that Tuesday that it was released, it was still showing at Shady Brook Cinemas.
Yeah, y'all keep using this term movie theater. I'm a little confused. Are you talking about the places that sell the popcorn buckets? I'm confused. No, yeah. No, I'm with. Yeah, I do like it when that happens, and it's been a long time since we've gotten like a real kind of runaway box office phenomenon like that. Which Remote was not. Remote was not a phenomenon. It was not. It's not a cherished, beloved classic, and I think most of the people involved in it would probably say like, "Oh yeah, I made that movie," But I had a good time. I think I've had the best time with this one than I have with any of the other Moonbeam.
Me too.
It's difficult to go back and look at these movies that are very firmly just not for us anymore, and having not watched them at the time and being only kind of loosely aware of their existence, like I don't carry with me a lot of nostalgia for these. So you do have to kind of look at them with your adult eyes and see like, oh, okay, would this have appealed to me as a kid? Probably. Does it appeal to me now? Not really on that primal level, but I do enjoy it as a time capsule, of this very specific era in 90s cinema where
sure
grew up with this. Yeah.
But you know what this movie has that Home Alone doesn't have? Psychotic Symphony.
It sure does. That leads me to my final tangent, because there's two things that happened on this TV in the house that were surprising to me and sent me down a rabbit hole. One of them was the appearance of Psychotic Symphony's music video from Bad Channels, a truly demented and memorable part of that movie, which is growing in my esteem with each following week. I think Bad Channels is a lot of fun. The other thing is the televangelist in this movie. I had to look this up. The televangelist, Brother Milo, that is in fact Milo, a name that we have seen many times, and I don't think we've ever really commented on it. Milo was the production designer for a lot of these early movies. Now, when I saw that name for the first time, my head went to Martin Short in Father of the Bride, right? In a single, mononymous, like kind of effete, like a foreign person who's like walking around, like putting up all the props and all the sets and everything like that. And instead, it's kind of this very elderly man with a raspy voice who did not start working as a production designer until 1989. And then he worked as a production designer until his death in 1999. His most recent credit was in The Primevals, but that was shot back in 1994. So there was this period of 10 years where this guy, this single-named guy who came out of nowhere, was just a production designer on all these B movies. And I really want to know who this guy was and what his story is. There's nothing really out there that I can find. But I'm adding that to my list of questions to ask Charles Band if we ever have him on the show. I was like, what's the deal with Milo? Because I'm very interested in this guy.
I mean, get Gimlet on the phone, man. Get them to make this into like a 6-part mini-series, podcast series.
Charlie Kind,
unearthing Milo
to come out of retirement. This is the time. Yeah, absolutely. Mystery Show must ride again. But yeah, that was my one little tangent about that, because I just realized we'd never talked about Milo, and it's so unusual to see any like single named person in the credits of anything, much less in a below the line role. So I want to know the deal with Milo.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you have more information on Milo, puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. Definitely let us know if you've got any inside baseball on this, because it's funny. I kind of loved the idea of this weird televangelist channel.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, as just this odd throwaway detail of the show, but I've seen the name Milo pop up. I didn't make the connection this time and dig deeper at all. So it's interesting for somebody to get into an industry that late and to do a job like that for 10 years leading up to their death when they're already sort of a senior citizen age, presumably. So
Yeah,
definitely let us know like what the deal was with this guy. If you happen to know, email us and we will read your information live on the air.
But I think you can make an argument that remote, bad channels, and TerrorVision all form a kind of triptych. It's the Ted Nicolau trilogy of television or remote-related movies, and they all have those fun little satirical details on their TV shows. So, there's a strong theme going there. If you want to have a weird trilogy, TerrorVision, remote, bad channels, that'd be a fun trilogy to run.
Well, that was an excellent tangent, Steve. I appreciated where you went with that because,
does that earn me a Tangy?
Yeah,
I know we have the upcoming Tangy Awards.
It's tight competition. I mean, we have to submit that Ernest one to the Academy and see.
That's a world class one. Yeah, that is a top tier tangent.
Well, this is a very 90s movie, which I appreciated about it. And if you weren't sure that this was the 90s, even after seeing, what Randy and his friends look like. His mom is introduced and she's dressed like Blossom, which is pretty amazing. And
she's
then
still rocking some shoulder pads in her business suit. Yeah.
yeah. She also, she's got Blossom vibes. She also kind of gives Aunt Martha from Sleepaway Camp vibes.
Yeah.
With some of her deliveries and her outfit. But
are you just saying that because my hand is on my chin right now?
Yes, I do believe I am. Why, I'm sure of it. That's one of my favorite performances in a movie of
it's
all
really
time.
good.
It does shout out to Desiree Gould if she's still acting.
Amazing.
I don't know if she has come back to earth yet from that singular performance, though. But
I believe we lost her recently, if I'm not mistaken. Really? Yeah, we did. We lost her in 2021, unfortunately. Yeah, but she was great.
There's some incidental music in this movie too, where he's just kind of hanging around in his room, and it really sounds like the theme from 90210 is playing in the background.
Yeah,
like all of these touches. Like I was just, I was like, even though I don't know this movie is very firmly rooted in a really specific time period, and I was able to kind of put myself back in that time period while watching it. And so I think without the supernatural element, without the gimmick of the dinosaurs or something like that, it was more enjoyable. I think the biggest detractor for me is that the stuff that happens seems very inconsequential, and it's not just because the three guys are so bumbling, but it's because there's no like real lesson to be learned. Like with Home Alone, it's like Kevin wishes his family away. So he then has to learn that, oh no, I love them. I'm dependent on them. I need them. I literally need them to save me now. Whereas here it's like this kid's getting in trouble, but he doesn't even really know he's getting in trouble because he doesn't listen to the answering machine messages. He just kind of goes out on his own and finds himself in this model home as kind of a place of solitude.
Yeah.
And so there's no point in the middle of the movie where he has fuck my mom, she's so strict, I'm going to show her, I'm going to go hang out in this model home. Like, you don't have that. It's just, he just happens to end up in this place where these three happen to also end up. And so it's kind of sweaty and kind of flimsy in that way. But, it goes in the places that you expect it to in some ways. I mean, the yodeling doll was unexpected in a lot of ways, but it was like, all right, somebody is going to end up with remote controlled cars for shoes. Check it off of the checklist.
Somebody's going to get slimed.
Hot tar.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that would melt his skin off his body. Oh, that was real.
Oh my God. A punitive measure. People would get tarred and feathered and it would horribly scar them for life. Yes, it was, That
was the only bad part about this movie I felt, though, was like that ending climax. Like with Home Alone, there's more entertaining in it besides the climax at the end with the booby traps.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this movie. You're just waiting the entire movie to get the booby traps.
Yeah.
Basically, unfortunately, because it's just kind of like, okay, he's playing with toys that I wish I had. That's really awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling really great that I don't have a model plane right now that I can fly around.
Right.
Yeah. There's a bully, but the relationship with the bully doesn't really do much other than the fact that his the bully takes his one plane, kind of leads then to the accident happening that gets him in trouble. But this bully Ben, who is displaying very crazy eyes at the camera a lot of the time.
Yeah.
This actor Jordan Belfi, he grew up to be like a pretty handsome, charismatic guy, and ended up having a bunch of arcs on pretty popular shows. He was on Entourage. He was on Grey's Anatomy. He's been on some other stuff, and so like that was interesting. Like he's worked very consistently since then.
Look him up if you want to see a set of the straightest teeth you've ever seen in your life. My God, man, that is you could measure wood on that. Like that's impressive.
Yeah. And I think if I had to kind of make an analogy, like how sort of inconsequential this movie is comparatively to Home Alone, which they weren't trying to duplicate Home Alone. They were trying to bank off the success of Home Alone. They're not trying to match it in terms of scale, but it's like in that movie, it's like an iron, it's hot tar, it's a tarantula, it's paint buckets, it's Christmas ornaments, it's all these things. He throws one tack into the guy's shoe, and it's like, all right, he's kind of doing the same thing, but it's just a much more measured approach, you know. And that's kind of what this is. This is the one tack to the onslaught of broken glass and metal and stuff that is Home Alone.
Yeah. Home Alone really, I think it's been commented on a great deal, but those men would be dead.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Home Alone 2 in particular, the moment he throws 4 bricks at Marv's head from 4-story building, Marv is dead. He is dead. He's not surviving that. Nobody is surviving that. That's terrible. The first one killed him. But yeah. Anyway. Well, I think that's all we have got to say about Remote. Was there any final thoughts that we had to add before we close out?
I feel like you and I, Steve, have kind of already come forward with our final thoughts on this one. That I enjoyed this one more than both Pet Shop and Prehysteria in a lot of ways, because it was a more straightforward, just kind of a kid in peril type movie. But now that you've had the chance to revisit this movie after so many years with your relationship with it, Logan, like, what are you walking away this time feeling?
It's good. Like, I will say, to today's standards, like, I was thinking about showing this to like my 6-year-old son, but the fact that it is pretty slow, I was like, and like you see a lot of like the bumbling idiots, as they call them. We get a lot of them just kind of like not really doing much.
Eating beans off the floor.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, like, with today's attention span, like my son would not care anything about. I mean, he would probably like watching the last 20 minutes of it or whatever. But I mean, and I will say it is nice because it is like an hour and 20, which is like almost every full moon movie, or hour and 10 to some of them.
Yeah.
But like, I do like that aspect, which is even though it's short, it does have some stuff that still, like I said, still has the nostalgic value to me. Is it as good as I remember? Unfortunately, no. It's because that's the thing, is like I know we keep on talking about Home Alone, but or like I'll say Three Ninjas. Like I can watch Three Ninjas today and be tickled pink. Like throw it on and it's still entertaining. It's got good beats. This movie really did sell me as a child on the remote aspect. And then, no pun intended, but then the other things involved kind of just go through the wayside as far as like a kid's interest and so forth. But yeah, like it's still as far as like when it comes to like direct to video, like it's still a good movie as far as when it comes to direct to video, because there's a lot of junk out there.
Yeah.
And as far as like kids movie, I still think it's very it's still appropriate, and I think it still would be. It's still a good kids movie. It's just unfortunately today's kids, you're just not gonna be able to have them sit down and watch this movie that's a little bit more on the slow side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, got stuff like coming at the screen fast and like every 30 seconds and stuff like that. So that does suck a little bit, because like I said, like I think this movie to today's standards would hold up a little bit more if times hadn't changed.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we thank you so much for bringing this movie to our attention and for coming onto the show and talking about it with us. We had a great time going off on many tangents on this one. Real tangy contender on this episode.
Oh yeah.
Where can people find all of your amazing stuff if they want to check out more of what you are doing?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere you search Video Villa Entertainment, you'll find us. Either that be YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. If you want a one-stop shop, videovillaentertainment.com, then you just go through all the social media links through there if you want. And we're new episodes every other week. So bi-weekly on Fridays is when we release our new stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you like other stuff, like we've mentioned, like nostalgia feels and so forth like that. We do some horror on our channel too as well. Because I really do enjoy horror a lot. It is like probably 80% of the movies that I actually do watch. But we still want to I still try to cater to the things my wife's into, stuff like that. So,
well, you are wearing a baseball hat with Roy's hockey mask on.
Yes,
it. I should point out.
Yes,
a neophyte would go, oh, that's a Jason mask. No, it's not.
That's a Roy.
That's a Roy mask.
That's a genuine Roy all the way. If you check out the Video Villa Entertainment channel, you're going to find lots of stuff that is there for you to enjoy, especially if you want to kickstart some of your nostalgia. I know, Logan, you've done some stuff with Movie Dumpster guys. They're friends of the show, and you and I met at Monster Mania, so obviously knew you were a big horror guy. So there's a lot of crossover. If you check out Logan and Becca's channel, you're going to find something that you love, I'm sure. If you like what we do, you can jump onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a little 5-star rating, maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. You can keep up with the show on Instagram or Blue Sky or Threads, and you can listen to the episodes on YouTube. On Instagram, it's Puppetmasters_Castle Freaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared or Steve at Minotaur Matador. On those other platforms, just search the name of the show and you'll see us, doing our promo posts for what's coming up on those weeks. It's a lot of work to keep putting those promo posts out, but we're not the only show that Steve would like to promote while he has the opportunity. So Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, absolutely. I've got another show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together, because that is what we do. We are watching movies and then playing the video games based on those movies. As always, we are significantly behind the release schedule of this show. But I can tell you that later this evening, I'm going to be recording our episode on Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, which I think is going to be a fascinating conversation. That is a deeply weird movie and a surprisingly excellent couple of games. So you won't want to miss that one. And we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up for the holiday season as well. So you'll want to stick around for that. And you will want to stick around for our show as well, because next week we are going back into Empire territory. Well, really, more specifically, we're going back into enemy territory, a movie I really don't know much at all about. And I know we're coming off the heels of talking about a movie called Deadly Weapon. So these could be interchangeable titles for as far as I know. We haven't recorded either of those movies yet. But
this is a fun one. And this is one with a Ray Parker Jr. acting role.
Oh, this is that one. Oh, yes. Okay, and we got Jan Michael Vincent, and we have the recently passed Tony Todd appearing in that movie. R.I.P. to one of the greats. I'm excited that we're going to get the chance to talk about him a little bit. So, yeah. If you ever wanted to know why the singer of the Ghostbusters theme song didn't become a movie star, you're about to find out. So we will see you next time for enemy territory. Now I just need to press the little button on the remote that ends this recording. Oh shit, what's that? Yodelay, 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 yodelay.
You know what? I was gonna actually just cut it there, but no, we're gonna make it awkward.
No, we're gonna make me sit in that. We're gonna make me think about what I did.
You think about that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. As always, thank you to Logan and Video Villa Entertainment for coming on and talking about this movie with us. And we will see you all next week for Enemy Territory. Bustin' makes us feel good.